My name's Guy Kesteven. I've been a professional bike and kit tester for over 25 years, and today I'm summing up my thoughts on the fantastic Specialized Status 140. So I'm going to go a really quick talk through on the geometry, on the spec and the features, because this is a pretty simple bike, and then we're going to hit the trails here at Stainburn to find out why that makes it one of the most fantastically fun but super affordable shred machines that you can. So starting with the frame, it's M5 alloy, which is Specialized standard alloy, and to be honest, it's a pretty much standard business as usual Specialized layout. You've got shock in the center there, bottle cage placement down there, you've got that Fu Manchu linkage, I don't know if they still call it that, maybe not, they used to, that linkage there that joins onto this rocker link on the bent seat tube there, and then you've got pivot here, and then crucially you've got this horse pivot at the back end, which is what makes it an FSR stroke horse lightener linkage and a pure 4-bar, because that means because you've got the pivot there, that means it actually affects the way the rear wheel moves in relation to the rest of the bike. It's not just a single swing arm from main frame to rear wheel. And while the frame is relatively simple, it's still really well engineered. You've got big pivots there, braced on both sides, you've got frame protector there and underneath as well. The cable guiding where it comes out the main frame is really neat. You've got a chain guide, you've got ISCG tabs. The machining and forging on this section here is really neat as well. And while it doesn't get the adjustable head tube setup of the Stumpjumper Evo, you do get a higher low setting on the shock shuttle there. And that means that the head tube changes from an already radical 64.2 degrees in high to 63.7 properly slack with this 140mm forking. And that slack head tube pairs with a 490mm top tube on this S4. You've got a really short seat tube, and then the seat stays themselves, because this bike is designed to run mullet, so 27.5 at the rear, 29 at the front, are super short at 426mm. And then, well, it's obviously accentuated by the fact it's sat on a boulder. That bottom bracket height is pretty low as well, at 333mm in the low position, or you can raise it by 9mm in the high position, so that does occasionally take its toll on the cranks there. Sizing runs from S1 to S5, and they all have a super short seat tube in relation to reach. So if you want to run an extra long bike, you're not going to struggle for dropper space. When it comes to spec, Specialized have gone with a really sorted package for the money. You've got Fox 36 rhythm up front, 140mm travel, the simple but remarkably effective grip damper on there. You've got a Fox Float X Performance shock on the back with their own RX Trail tune in there. Then you've got SRAM NX gears, so, you know, cheaper end of the spectrum, and you get an old school splined free hub on there, so it's got an 11 tooth rather than 10 tooth at the bottom, but you still get that full Eagle range of gearing. And then in terms of braking, they've gone with a basic Code R brake, but they've spec'd 200mm rotors front and rear, so you've got plenty of stopping power. Then you've got Performance Float X Fox shock with the piggyback damper on it for taking the heat out of long descent situations, and you've still got a firm pedal lever on there and rebound adjust as well. The wheels are Specialized own rims with 29mm internal, and then these excellent Butcher Grid Trail T9 tyres on there. One of my favourite tyres, a really good, soft, slow rebounding rubber compound. Works great in pretty much every condition. Occasionally gets slightly caught out in really cold and really wet conditions, but no more than a lot of other top tyres. And these are something of a bargain as well. Plus, they're relatively light, and they don't drag too much either, but it's more the lightness that really helps with the agility of this bike. And even with this kit, without pedals, this whole bike weighs in at 15.3 kilos, which for a £2,600 bike is really pretty impressive. I mean, it's the same weight as a carbon-framed Merida 140-6000. You get Specialized, always comfortable bridge saddle. You get an X-Fusion Manic dropper post, which works really well. You get a nice dropper lever on there. It's not waggly, it's not loose, it's got a reasonably smooth feel. You get the excellent dirty grips. You get super wide Specialized bars on a super short stem to manage that super slack front end. In fact, the whole front end's rather super. The only thing I'd possibly add to this spec straight away is maybe put an insert in the rear tyre, because that shorter rear end and the mullet wheel means it does hit things a little bit harder than a big 29er, and that's only the grid trail tyre carcass, so it's not a DH spec tyre, and an insert in the back wheel would just help it shrug off bigger, rockier impacts if you're riding somewhere with a lot of angry geology. And one thing I didn't mention is that it comes in two colourways, so you've got this purpley red here, and then there's a more military two-tone green finish. But what's really interesting about this bike is Specialized have kept their branding to an absolute minimum on it. So it's just a subtle status under the belly there, and then an S on the head tube. So it's got a real kind of covert stealth vibe. And the whole launch was intended to be this kind of influencer-based sort of guerrilla tactics thing, where you couldn't even find the bike in shops or on the Specialized website. You had to kind of sniff it out yourself, which, you know, is an interesting concept. I'm not sure how well it played out, but you'll be pleased to know that both the 140 and the 160 bike, its bigger but essentially very similar brother, are now available in all Specialized dealers. But while the spec is really, really good for the price, what makes this a properly outstanding bike is how much fun it is to ride. So let's slap this GoPro on my chest and find out exactly how it goes. And as you might expect, that radical balance completely dominates how this status feels. And even though I've been riding this bike since spring and it's now September, it's still proper laugh out loud every time I get on it. The way that front wheel is so far out in front for that massive 29er stability and grip, and then the back end is chucked right underneath you for jibbing and swerving and kicking around. It's a proper caricature bike to ride, and the more the trail twists and turns, the better it feels, because it does feel like that rear wheel is tucked up right underneath you, so that Flow X is working pretty hard on the end of that super short swing arm. But on the other hand, that means you can really pick up and pop that front wheel. It doesn't get bogged down, and it also means it's got a good little snap out of turns. But when the hero dirt is running like this, it's just begging for you to get that big bar lent right over and just let it run, braking bumps be damned. One thing I would say is that don't expect it to be the easiest technical climber. It's certainly got a lot of grip from that T9 rubber, that FSR back end. And I've said at 15.3 kilos, it's not as heavy as you might expect for a budget brawler. But that super slack head angle, short stem, means the bar does twitch around all over the place, and a mullet rear wheel will never, oh no, oh that was a disaster. I've got a stick through my back end, that's why. And while it's got a pretty steep seat angle, it's not freaky steep, so you are going to have to get forward on the nose of the saddle and probably use the low gears and that firm lever on the shock more than on a more trail focused bike. It could even just push, but it will get there. Just might wave about a bit and take its time. And that low bottom bracket also means more chance of tapping out the cranks on step ups or ruts as well. So if you find that happening a lot, just hike it up with the shock chip and gain yourself 9mm more clearance. But if you're beefing about the climbing performance on this bike, you've probably got the wrong Specialized entirely. because this is purely dedicated to maximum fun on the steepest, shroud-pierced, techiest trails you can find to play on. There's plenty of other bikes like the Stump Jumper or Stump Jumper Evo for still riding techie trails, but going a bit faster and a bit straighter. And what I really like about this Status 140 is it has a proper identity. You know, it's not just, whoa, you cheeky bugger. Exactly that, it's just proving it now. Turning in there on these marbly trails. It doesn't just feel like kind of worse version of the 160 bike. I mean, obviously that 160 Status with more travel is better for park stuff and just getting away with murder, but for playing on local woods, rowdy trails and your Instagram clips, this 140 has got such a sporting feel. It's just rowdy as all hell, and they've done that by keeping this shock tune at the back relatively tight, so it's not just rushing through all its travel. The 140mm fork feels great up front as well. Yeah, you'll get a bit of an arm pump on the longer, rockier descent, but for slamming berms and really pushing this extreme geometry on the rowdiest trails, it's just a brilliant bike. I've said rowdiest trails way too many times, but that's exactly what this Status is all about. Whether it's, you know, what you've dug in the woods with your mates, or, you know, old school descents where agility matters more than straight line speed. Not just when it comes to fun, but also for times. Like I say, I've had this a few months, and while it's always been my primary fun choice, it's also picked up some really impressive Strava stats along the way. As part of the, you know, having that more race tuned feel, but that really stable front end means you can push it proper hard. I mean, dynamically. It's like one of those skid trikes you get for kids with the chopper front end and the tiny little wheels at the back, and it is just outrageous fun. And while the 5-figure price S-Works bikes and Loic Bruni's World Cup leading Secret Shock DH bike might get all the limelight, Specialized also have a fantastic reputation over the years for delivering really great budget full suspension bikes. The big hit, the original Status freeride bike, the pitch trail bike, and this Status fits right in that lineup. And they've all been properly radical as well. Even the original Stump Jumper Evo, you know, when they commit, they properly commit to Specialized, and the fact they do it at such a low price point as well is just brilliant, because these first proper mountain bikes, these are the ones that make or break someone's passion for doing dumb stuff in the woods on a bike. And I always think these are disproportionately important. It's pretty easy to make a 10 grand super bike, but to make a really good, but to make an affordable bike that's just brilliant fun to ride is a much harder trick to pull off. But they really have done it with this Specialized Status. And while the parts pick is definitely on the functional, not fancy side, that's exactly what this bike needs. So The brakes are powerful enough because they've got those 200mm rotors, and the NX gearing gives you that full broad range 12-speed cassette, but you're not going to cry if you crash it and trash it. But where Specialized really score with the Status is the detailing, right down to things like these really nice Deity grips. The fact you've got this super wide bar and super short stem is perfectly for controlling that far away front end. You've got a chain guide on the crank, and perhaps most importantly, if you want to shred it straight away, the tyres are absolutely awesome. These butchers really are one of the best all-round trail tyres available at the moment. That T9 compound, Specialized spent a long time working with it. They actually went to a totally new tyre vendor for this series of tyres, and the results are absolutely awesome. And they've got a great carcass as well, so they feel really nicely and really well balanced between kind of sprung and damped. But that super slow rebound T9 rubber really gives a ton of grip in a load of conditions right through the year. The only thing I would say is, while it's okay on mixed trails, that back tyre is going to take a lot of hammer on this mullet setup, especially on a bike that's begging to be ridden as hard as this Status. So you might want to put an insert in that rear wheel to protect the tyre and rim, or even run a DH tyre in the back. And it's not just a bike that's good value to start with, but then you're just going to throw away. It's a really solid frame that's worth properly upgrading when you can. I'm a member of the Status Facebook forum, and not only is it a super positive vibe from everyone loving their budget Specialized fun bikes, but it's all talk about, you know, bigger tyres, coil shocks, shock upgrades, so you can make an absolute top quality ripper out of this frame set. So there you go, Specialized Status, an awesome affordable money play bike that somehow doesn't just represent brilliant value, but has a vibe that totally transcends its price. Or maybe it's a function of its price, because it's got that proper, insolent, have-a-go hero kind of underdog subversiveness that a bike like this really should have, I believe. You know, it's got a proper punk attitude, this bike. And in normal circumstances, I'd be really sad to see it go, because I've just loved having it around for the past few months to just grab off the wall and go for a proper rag on. But in this instance, it's a fairy tale ending, because one of my wife's workmates, her son, was looking for her first proper mountain bike, and this was, you know, and they said, well, we'll help you out with your savings that you've got from your Saturday job and everything, and if you get your good grades during exams, you know, we'll chip in about a bit. So the great news is William worked hard, he got his grades, and Specialized have done him a great price on this demo bike. So he's picking it up tonight, ready to begin his own Status shredding story. And that's exactly how I got my first proper mountain bike, a Giant Escaper from York Cycle Works, back in 1989. So big up to all the parents out there who don't think spending money on a mountain bike is a daft idea, because look where they could end up. So well done, William, and bloody well done for Specialized for making bikes that don't break the bank but give you a criminal level of entertainment. So massive thanks to Specialized UK for loaning me the bike for test and letting me hang on to it for this long. Thanks very much to my normal channel sponsors, Giro Cycling UK, PT's Products, Enduro Bearings, Torque Nutrition, Crud XL Fenders, even got one on today despite the fact it's dusty, and Hebtro Co Clothing. And massive thanks to my Patreon subscribers for their monthly donations, because those really help keep the channel sustainable, so I can justify spending more time away from my job writing for magazines and websites and getting chatty in front of a GoPro on these bikes for you as well. So if you really like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing on Patreon, and you'll get exclusive early and extended, as well as ad-free edits as a thank you. But if you can't afford that right now, I mean, it starts about the price of a cup of tea and a biscuits, but, you know, I know times are hard. Make sure you subscribe, click for notifications, and give this a thumbs up like so YouTube knows you enjoy it. But most of all, tell your mates, there's an old lad who's been test riding bikes for over a quarter of a century, and he still gets totally psyched on ones as good as this one. Because I've been Guy Kesteven on Guy Kes TV, raving on about the Specialized Status 140.